Welcome to the Standish WoodStory. My name is Winnie, and today I'm going to give you a tour of my wood shop. So let's head on inside and get started. My shop is located inside of a 2.5-car garage. However, it is still very much a fully functioning car placing garage, meaning that you can still get 2 full cars in here at night. And that means that because I wanted to have that ability to still have 2 cars in here, I had to make everything in my shop fit on the half size of the garage. And that definitely posed some challenges. This is a very small layout for a shop. However, what I've done is I've put a lot of things on wheels. And this space is roughly 8 feet by 21 feet. So it's under 200 square feet. And that's not a lot of space. That is definitely a small shop. However, I do have some key benefits, and that is once I move out my car, it all of a sudden doubles the space. And having nothing at all in a blank space can make a huge difference because especially when you're working on big projects, you want to have tons of floor space so that you can get to work. And because I have put a lot of my tools on wheels, it also means that at night I can store them. But when I need them during the day, all I have to do is cart them back out and then they can live in this space instead. So essentially, my space usually gets doubled every single day. It's pretty rare that I use the third part of my garage. Usually I still have a car parked in here. Today is an exception for the tour of my lovely shop here. But as you can see, I still have some storage over here as well. This is my table saw. This is a saw stop cabinet saw, and it is a 36-inch version. And I chose this one because it has the saw stop technology that will activate if your fingers come anywhere near the blade. And even though that was definitely an added investment to spend the money on a saw stop, I have 0 regrets. And I know there's haters out there, and I know there's lovers of this product, but I have to say, as a newer woodworker, having the knowledge that if my hands ever get close to it, that I'm not going to be losing my fingers. Maybe I'll get a little scratch. That is worth its weight in gold. And I get it. This is a very expensive machine and it might not be within your budget, but you can also get smaller versions of this that are less expensive. They do have a contractor version. It still has this technology. I would say get that first. If you can't afford the big one, that's totally fine. Get the small one and then build a kick-ass outfeed table for it, and you're essentially going to get the same benefits. Later on, after having had this for a while, I did decide to also get the router table. This is an add-on, and it comes very handy because you can also use it as an extra outfeed table. And I can take this off like this, and I can put it down here, and now all of a sudden I have all of this extra space, which is awesome when you are working with big pieces of wood. But the benefit of also having it is, of course, that I don't need a different area for my router station. I can just have it all here together. And when it's not in use, I usually just lock it down like this, and it's good. Because I don't have any wheels on my table saw, and because I have no plans of ever moving it, it was really important that I chose the right spot for this in my shop. It takes up the majority of my shop. So it's really important that it was in the right location. And one of the things that I had to think about was I need to be able to have giant boards, maybe giant sheets of plywood come right through here. So there needs to be a lot of space behind me. But equally, on the other side, there needs to be a lot of space for it to feed out through. I will say I've never had any issues with my laser being here. So anything that I've ever done has been able to clear through here. This is an outfield table that I built almost right after I got the table saw. And this has been the pride and joy of my shops because I do all my finishing work here, which also means that I have to keep it really clean because if I'm using the table saw, it's still my outfeed table. So if I have a giant project here drying, then that's going to get in the way. So that's the only thing that's a little bit sucky, but that's kind of the thing when you have a small shop. You can't have everything, right? Like I could add a collapsible table in the middle, but then I can't move my car in at night. So there's always something going on. Most of the time, it works just fine. I'll set things to dry, and then at night, I can usually move things out of the way when it's had enough drying time. I got these plans for this particular one off of Shop Nation. He does some amazing plans for workbenches. I modified it to fit my need. I believe this version had a router outfeed table, but I already knew at that time that I wasn't going to need that, so I never built that into it. But what I liked about it was that the plans were easy to adjust to my needs. And then I added drawers, and I also have wheels, of course. I added wood storage to the back of the table. And this wood storage in the back here could definitely be optimized. I keep having these plans that I'm going to do something really cool back here and actually organize it really properly. And I did kind of make a little divider in the back there to better store some of the wood. But honestly, I find that just kind of throwing it in there, it works for now. I do try not to keep more than that in there. I think it just gets too junky. But because this is a heavy-duty table, I don't actually pull it out that often. My big pieces of wood are all stored up there on racks. And then I have usually some boards that are lying right here on top of my planer. And then in between my 2-car garage, I have another wood area right here. These are usually the boards that I just brought in. They might be finishing drying up, just kind of getting ready for the next project before I either store them up there or bring them to good use. And then I also have wood storage over here, which is my, okay offcuts. There are little things here and there. It's honestly very similar to what I have over on the outfeed table. But, you got to have wood storage everywhere. If you don't, then I don't think you can call yourself a woodworker. So for this outfeed table / workbench, I added T-track to it, which was also part of the plans that they suggested doing that. And I've definitely loved having the T-track. I added it to the whole table, and to be quite honest, I don't think I have ever used this part of the T-track. It's just not something that I do. But I do use this quite frequently. So having kind of that one little area where you can clamp things down to, that's very handy to me. I thought originally that I was going to have 2 slots so that my T-track from my table saw could continue into this. But it ended up being a little bit of a problem with alignment. And even though it's the same height as my table saw, it wasn't going to work. And it wasn't worth the trouble. So honestly, when I have my cross-cutting sled or anything that needs the T-track that needs to come really far out, all I do now is I just pull out my table a little bit. So it works. It's good enough. And speaking of good enough, as you can see here, my drawers were never finished. I kept thinking I was going to put some nice facades on my drawers. But to be quite honest, I actually like kind of being able to see what I have in my drawers. And of course, the dust does kind of get in there, but I'm pretty good with my dust collection. So it's not a crazy amount of dust that ends up in here. Back when I was deciding on my shop layout, and don't get me wrong, this is a work in progress. My shop layout did not come to look like this from day one. I've had lots of tools that's been moved around. Usually every time I get a new tool, something else usually has to get moved or I'll figure out a better solution for it. But one of the things that took me a while to figure out was where to put my dust collection system. And I ended up with this Rikon 1 horsepower dust collection system. And it is definitely a great tool. However, it is not as powerful as I would like for it to be. It is meant for a small shop, and it does have the ability to hook up to 2 machines at the same time, which is great. However, since I added the second hose to it, the suction power has really diminished. So I am now installing some dust blasters, some dust gates, some blast gates. That's going to hopefully help bring back some of that suction power so that I can close off one hose and open it again when need to so that the other one still works fully. As well, it is important to have a system that you can easily remove the dust from when the time comes. And as you can see, I have mine on the wall right now, which is great because it saves space. but it is a bit of a pain to change because I do have to get up here on the table in order to change the machine. So when you're thinking about your dust collection system, definitely think about where do you have the space for it, but also think about how you're going to access it to get that bag off when it does need to be emptied. And depending on how much woodworking you do, that could be quite often. I have weeks where I have to change it daily, and then I have other weeks that will go by where I'm not really doing a lot of planing or jointing, and then I might be able to have it sitting up there for 2 weeks at a time before I need to change it. You can absolutely add a Cyclone dust extractor to this as well, and that is on my to purchase list. But I have to figure out where that would go if I do end up with that. I also have this thing up here, and this is also a helper to remove all the harmful dust stuff that's in the air. And as you can see right now, it's dirty and it needs to be changed. So you do have to remember to change the filter. But essentially what that is, it's an air filtration system, and it has this little handy remote here, and I can turn it on. And it has different settings. I believe that's the lowest one. Let's see. It does show it if you come over on this side. Yeah, that's the lowest right now. And you can put it on a timer. It's okay. It's great. It definitely removes all of the dust particles in the air. But as you can hear right now, it's loud. So when you're in here, unless you're actually doing something that requires a lot of dust extraction, I don't always turn it on just because of that. It's loud. I also invested in a Festool dust extraction system. This one is primarily meant for my miter saw and for my sander. I wanted to have something that I could easily hook up and move around when needed. And as an added benefit, it also works for my drill press. I could easily clean up that. And I usually have my cleaning hose on it as well, so that when I get a whole bunch of dust over here on the table saw, I can quickly remove that. Over in my far corner, I have my Laguna Bandsaw, and this is the 14BX version. And the reason that I chose this particular model is because it was the largest bandsaw that I could get within my price range that still had a key safety feature, which is it has this foot pedal that you can push on. And when you push on it, the blade stops almost immediately. Like, obviously not as fast as the saw stop technology, but it's pretty fast. And it might not be a foolproof safety feature, but it definitely helps to know that there is one extra way that you can shut off this machine if you need to. Because let's say your hands are here and you're doing something and you need to cut it, and now all of a sudden you can't go over there. I don't know, maybe. But at least this gives you that little bit of confidence knowing that this machine is going to stop within milliparts of a second. So safety is key, right? I do find that it is very hard to change the blade on it. And maybe that's true for all bandsaws. I don't know, because I've never owned a bandsaw before I owned this one. But I find it takes forever to take it off and get it back on and get the tension right and to get it properly aligned. I am definitely thinking about getting those rolly thingies down here. I can't remember the proper word for them right now. To help with this feeding and for alignment and all that kind of good stuff. We'll see if that helps. It's a tricky thing, a bandsaw. You're supposed to be able to resaw and get everything really straight. And I have followed all the things. I've seen all the videos. I have done the bandsaw clinic video guy. And I am still having issues. Honestly, like, these are brand new blades. They should be completely square whenever I'm using them. But I still find that I'm having issues. There's drift constantly. But anyway, it's a constant battle. I keep looking at new YouTube videos to learn and to figure out what to do or what I am doing wrong. But it's a work in progress. And then right next to the bandsaw, I have a couple of shelves right here. And it also stores my Festool sanding pads and my Festool sander. even though it's not actually in there right now. It's over there. So I don't know. Right now, I guess it's just wasted storage. I guess I'm just showing off all that Festool stuff that, people love to hate on as well. But they're great machines. Honestly, these things are fantastic, and I am really happy that I invested in them. I can't afford that for all of my tools, but as I replace tools one by one, I'm always looking to Festool to see how they compare. And often, they compare very well. And then I have a whole bunch of my templates kind of stuck over here in this corner, things I've done in the past that I might use again. That's over there. I got my handy dandy logo cup right here. And then I have not wood scraps, but very important pieces right here. These are for the laser. These are little laser templates based on what kind of wood I'm using. And I have done a whole bunch of these test cards in different materials. And they just kind of tell me what settings I should be having the laser on when I am running it. And then I also have some trim right here. I use these for picture frames, and I keep a little piece of an old one so that when I use my router table, that I can easily set it to the right width and depth, and that just helps speed things up. So I keep some of those on hand in different variations in case I needed different sizes and stuff. So I always have those in there. And then I have my thermometer. Woohoo, 16 degrees. That's balmy. You wouldn't think that it was the middle of winter right now, which it may or may not be, depending on when you're watching this video. But it definitely is winter for me right now. I just invested in another heater. This is an electric heater, and I use it when I can, but I don't have enough power for it. So I always have to remember to turn it off before I use my miter saw and my dust collector over there, or I have to run down to the basement to reset my breakers. So don't want to do that. And then over here on this wall, I had this plan that I was going to make this, a French cleat wall. And I kind of started doing it, and I know some people really love it, but I didn't find that it was as functional as I wanted it to be. And maybe that works really well when you have a giant wall with lots of space and you need things to be moved around all the time. But honestly, like my tools, they just need to go up there and live there permanently. I'm happy where they are. They can stay there, and that's good. So I ended up kind of just starting to drill into my French cleat after a while, which is totally fine. And over here, I have a very important thing, which is my fire blanket. This thing is a key safety feature. I have a laser right here, and that can burst into fire at any freaking time. So that is definitely important to have. If I use that one versus a fire extinguisher, then there's a chance I can save my machine. But of course, if there is a fire in my shop, then I also have a fire extinguisher. And this one does not move. It stays here, so I know where it is at all times. And it is regularly inspected. And I highly recommend that you get one for your shop too, because it is something that everyone needs. Okay, so that brings me to my laser. And right now it's covered up, so let's uncover it. But as you can see, I also tend to use that as a storage space, because one of the things about a small shop is that you're always trying to find somewhere that you can put a tray. And now that I put that there, I'm going to guarantee you in about 5 minutes, I'm going to need to use the table saw, which means I'm going to have to move that tray. So things are always moving here. It's all right. It's just part of the fun. But this is the Omtech 80-watt laser. And this thing is a beast. It can do a lot. It can cut through plywood. It's awesome. It can infeed and outfeed. It's on wheels. And I assume that's a good thing, because if I ever needed to do the infeed and outfeed, then I could actually bring it out from the wall and use that. But I've never actually had to do anything that was larger than the bed size. And I believe that's about 20 by 28. So that's a fair size. It's pretty cool, this thing. I had a water cooler that I purchased separately for that runs. It has to run beforehand. And I do all kind of fun things with this thing. I have even started doing some epoxy work. Like, it can engrave, and then I can fill it with epoxy or spray paint afterwards. And that's definitely an added benefit that I hadn't really thought about when I first got it. So migrating from the one corner, we've already talked about the bandsaw, the laser, the outfeed table, the table saw, the router table. Let's move over to the drill press. This is a newer addition to my shop. I chose to get a tabletop drill press, and I'm very happy that I did that because it means that I could decide what cabinet size to put it on top of so that I have the optimal working height for my table. So that's something to keep in mind if you are thinking about getting a floor model. Maybe it's going to be really high, maybe it's going to be really low. I'm not sure, but I would definitely consider that as you might be a really tall person, you might be a really short person. And yeah, having a good working height is always key for a tool. I have not used this too much yet. I'm starting to learn how to use it for fun projects, and I try to use it for drilling when I have to, but it is still something that I am exploring. And I built the cabinet for this. This has my different tools that I use. It has some drill bits, some Forstner bits. I have I guess I didn't lock down the wheels. I have my push pedals for my table saw. And I have my router supplies over here. This was the first set that I bought. These things are crap. These barely work. They're definitely not what I would consider a quality set, but it's kind of fun when you're first trying out some routering. And then I have since then upgraded to some better bits. And I bought this multi-pack to begin with, but I don't know. You kind of buy things and then you never even open up certain ones of them. So you can kind of see which ones I'm using and which ones I am not. And then I've had to invest in a whole bunch of different ones along the way as well. So I have all my extras here. And I did recently make this table, this drill press table, and you can check out the video that I made because it is definitely almost impossible using a drill press without a drill press table. So if you don't have one, definitely recommend that you build one. Over here, we have my miter saw, and this is a newer tool as well in my shop. I had this really old and crappy, I think it was a Craftsman version of it before. It was rusty and old, and it had a broken lever, and you've seen me work on it in many videos in the beginning. But I did upgrade to this one, and holy schmoly, a difference. This is a sliding compound saw, so it gives you so much more cutting space for cross-cutting. It has some really nice safety features that I like. I love that it has this hold-down clamp because I really don't want to have my fingers anywhere near this machine. And this one can rotate many different ways, 50 degrees, 60 degrees, and it also has the other way tilting. And I use this all the time. I find that this is a nice to have in the shop. If you already have a table saw and you spend a lot of money on that, this is definitely not a tool that you need right away because you can get a cross-cutting sled, or you can make a cross-cutting sled, and then you can do pretty much all the cuts that you can do on the table saw. Now, one thing that I do find is that the more that you get into a lot of different projects and you want to increase efficiency in your shop, it's really important to have different tools that do different things because it means that you don't have to change the other machines constantly. So let's say that you're doing something on the table saw, you're feeding big sheets of whatever through there, or you've had the angle set to some perfect cut. And then you need to go and cut off just a little bit. You can take it over here to the miter saw, cut it off. But if you only had the table saw, that would mean that you would have to now go back to squaring it up again and start all over. And then maybe you had to do that whole process once again. So it just speeds up your workflow. Doesn't mean that you can't do the same things on this that you can on the table saw. Your table saw is still going to be, in my opinion, the most versatile tool in the shop and the number one thing that I would recommend as a newer woodworker that you invest in. But again, do your research, get the right machine that works for you. Spend the money or save your money until you can afford the one that is actually the one that you want. And speaking of nice to have in the shop, this is definitely the one that is not necessary, but absolutely wonderful to have, especially if you are doing a lot of woodworking and perhaps you're a little bit more than just your weekend warrior. You're doing stuff that you want to make sure is absolutely square and straight. This is the King 8-inch jointer. And what it does is it takes a board such as this one and it makes it completely flat on the one side. Usually when you have a jointer, you use it in parallel with a planer, so that once you have that one side completely straight, you can take it over to the planer, because the planer takes whatever is on the one side and it translates it to the other side, which is why if you have a cup board, it's still going to be cupped after you run it through a planer, where with the jointer, it'll just make it completely smooth on the one side. And you can also make the edges straight as well. So this would go through like that, all the way through, and you can adjust it. So when you're just doing the other side, you can go through and you can make sure that you're not exposing any more of the cutter head than needed. I got the Rikon head for this one, and the finish is buttery smooth once it's gone through there. And I haven't found anything that it couldn't handle yet. This is a power machine. I love it. It's a great machine. It is heavy duty. One of the things that I didn't quite think about when I first got this machine was the amount of space that it needs in order to operate. Because I figured, I have a little piece of space right here. It can fit perfectly. However, you have to think about the length of your boards that are going through. So let's say that you have a 12-foot board that you want to feed through this jointer. Well, that means that I'm going to have to go all the way down there and feed it through all the way. And what's going to happen? It's going to hit my wall right over here. So that's never going to happen. For me, I'm maxing out at about 7 to 8 feet. That's about the maximum, the length of boards that I do. But that being said, I actually prefer not to run any boards through that are more than 4 or 5 feet. That's just a comfort for me. Like, it's more stable on the in and out feed table when it is a smaller board. It doesn't mean that you can't do it, but there's usually benefits to working with smaller boards. Even if they have a little bit of a cup, by cutting it down the middle, you actually reduce some of that already. So again, you don't necessarily need to plane joint those giant boards, cut them down, but you do need to think about where you're going to put it. And one thing that I forgot to mention about this particular model is that it needs 220 volts in order to operate. I do find that a lot of the 8-inch jointers, they do need a lot of power. So definitely make sure that you take a look at that before you get yours, just in case you do have any power restrictions. For me, I only have one 220 outlet, which means that I actually have to use this really ginormous extension cord that's rated for this particular machine in order to operate it. And I have to run this all the way through my shop to the other side because that's the only outlet that I have. Now, again, a jointer is not something that I necessarily use every single day, so it works for me right now. It's not that big of a deal. I do have some plans to feed some wire through the ceiling later on to avoid this whole back and forth, and anything on the floor is never a good thing. And next we have my planer. This thing is awesome. I got this one about a year ago, and it's a popular model. Lots of people love these things, and I absolutely understand why, because it is a workhorse. It doesn't take up that much space, and it makes your woodworking journey so much easier because you can actually process wood that is rough sawn versus completely surfaced already, which means you're going to be saving a ton of money by buying your wood already rough sawn versus finished, which is what they charge you a lot of money for. Now, again, this one will not make your wood straight. You have to do that first, either over on a jointer, or there's different sleds that you can use with this one in order to get a piece straight before you feed it through. But once you have that straight side, then this machine is just amazing. I only have the normal cutting heads that it came with right now. I would love to upgrade to the Rikon head soon, because again, it's just going to make the finish so much nicer. It's almost to the point where you don't need to sand after the fact. So again, speaking about time savings, right? These are nice to have things. It's not necessary, but man, is it nice to have when you can do it. And then I have a whole bunch of my quick clamps right here as well, and on the other side. So that way I have them handy. I have another area for clamps over here. These are my bigger clamps. And I don't have that many clamps, but it's been enough right now for what I need. I know it's kind of an ongoing joke that woodworkers can never have enough clamps. And I do agree with that, but they're also really expensive. So, little by little, investing in the good ones. And for now, this gets me by. There's one more section in my wood shop that's very important, and that is my first aid kit. And this is definitely something that I would recommend that you have in your shop as well. And I think it's often overlooked. But having a accessible and handy first aid kit can make all the difference if or when you end up hurting yourself. Because let's face it, we're all working with power tools, and these are not toys. And even if you're alert and even if you're prepared and doing everything the right way, accidents can happen. You never know when and where. But what you can do is you can prepare yourself by having a proper kit. So inside of this kit, I have quite a few things. I obviously have the essentials such as bandages. Those I use more frequently than I would like to admit, splinters and all that. I also recently invested in a tourniquet. I believe that's the proper word for it. And I still have to take the time to learn how to put this on, because it is one of those tools that if you have a severe accident, this can save your life until you get help. So I highly recommend that you get one of those. And then I have bandages, gauzes, alcohol, not for drinking, for wounds, and all the kind of things that you could possibly need in order to help yourself should an emergency arise. It has been an absolute pleasure showing you my wood shop today. It is small, but it is mighty, and I love it, and it inspires me daily, and I keep wanting to come out here so that I can continue to create content and new projects that you can build as well. And speaking of projects that you can build, don't forget to check out these videos for some inspiration. And in the next couple of weeks, there will definitely be lots of more videos coming with easy to build projects. So don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe so that you don't miss any of those. My name is Winnie Standish. This is my Standish Wood Story, and I'll see you next time in the next Wood Story.